If you've been following the upcoming Toyota GR86, you know there have been reports about the engine having a turbo 2.4 liter, 260 horsepower, and other reports saying it's going to have a 2.4 liter, but no turbo and around 217 horsepower. Let's take a look at it in this video, see what is really going on. There's also questions about the chassis, so we're gonna dive into it. My name is Eric and I make videos about enthusiast vehicles. So there's this upcoming engine also. It's called the FA24 and it's a Subaru engine. It's another boxer engine, which means it is a horizontally opposed 4-cylinder, kind of like the Porsche Flat 6, but not quite as fancy as that. So in the Subaru Ascent and the Outback, this is actually a pretty new engine. In those vehicles, it makes 260 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. Of course, it is a turbo engine. So it's kind of natural to think that, hey, this engine is going to make it into the new 86. It's actually going to be called the GR86 because it's under Gazoo Racing, which is the home, of course, of the Supra and the upcoming GR Corolla, or whatever they're going to call it, the GRN Corolla possibly. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the video. Anyways, GR is sort of the new home for sports cars under Toyota. I would definitely appreciate an early thumbs up in this video. It helps it get out to more people who want to hear about upcoming vehicle news. So there's two kind of conflicting reports about the chassis and the architecture. Some reports have been saying it's going to be on the TNGA, that's Toyota next generation architecture that currently underpins a lot of vehicles such as the Prius, the Camry, the Corolla, etc. Then there's other reports that say it's going to continue on its own architecture and it's actually sort of a dead-end chassis, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean that the current 86 is on its own platform and it's not shared with any other vehicles as far as I know. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. So we have two basic variables we're looking at here. We've got turbo versus non-turbo, or new platform, TNGA versus existing platform. Let's kind of dive into this and see what I think is really going on, and I think I'm actually right. A couple days ago, I did an analysis of some photographs from an Instagram user called K-Stefy. He had some photographs that are probably off of his cell phone, I think from Detroit. So Car Scoops and some other publications have some new photographs which are much clearer, and you can see a lot more detail in these photos. So I want to say I think this actually looks pretty good. I think it looks better than the spy stuff that we saw from K-Stefy a couple days ago. This is a little bit less camo on it, or better photos, I'm not quite sure, but this is clearly a different car as well. And so looking at this, let me ask you, does this look like brand new architecture to you? I'm just sort of putting that out there. You can go ahead and comment down below, comment on anything actually in this video. So the rumors about TNGA, does this look like a completely new platform to you? So I want to go into the speculation zone and I want to talk a little bit about how well the 86 BRZ combo has been selling over the last couple of years and how much money Toyota and Subaru together are willing or likely to be willing to invest in this vehicle. There's no question that this is a niche car. As you know, cars in general, the market is kind of shrinking for them. Sports cars especially are a smaller part of that market. So I pulled up some numbers from carsalesbase.com. They get the numbers from manufacturers, and I looked at the sales numbers for both the FRS and the 86 combination and the BRZ starting from 2012 when they were introduced all the way through last year, 2019. So looking at these numbers, they both had a pretty good launch back in 2012 when the car was available. In 2013, they sold about 18,000. Anyways, the FRS 86 combination sold about 76,000 units. To date, it's going to be a little bit more for 2020, but I didn't include that. And the BRZ from Subaru sold about 40,000 units. So the total combined units of both these vehicles is about 116,000 units to date since 2012. So we've got 9 years of data here. Now that might sound like a lot of vehicles, but actually it's not. Toyota sells hundreds of thousands of RAV4s per year. I think the sales numbers last year were in excess of 400,000. Now, just as a point of comparison, another manufacturer is selling the Mustang. Of course, that's Ford. And if you look at their sales numbers from 2012 to 2019, they are significantly bigger. They sold about 700,000 Mustangs in the same time period that Toyota and Subaru together sold about 116,000. So we're talking about 6 point something X, 6.5X, something like that. So let's call it 6 to 7 times more sales of the Mustang in the same time period as the FRS86 BRZ. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this argument here. So let's go back to this photo for just a second. You can see that the proportions are in fact really similar. It has sort of a Hyundai Genesis tail. I sort of like it. It looks much more modern. I actually really like this new design from what I'm seeing. It looks pretty good. If there's anybody out there that wants to do a render, just hit me up and I will definitely feature your work in an upcoming video. Please hit me up. I'm on Instagram. And also, if you have any information, inside information from Toyota, Ford, if you're in the supply chain, hit me up too. I'm going to keep your information completely confidential. Now let's look at the other big part of this equation, which is the turbo versus non-turbo engine. So currently this combination has the FA20 engine, which is of course a Subaru engine. It's a boxer engine. I think it sounds awful. It's a terrible sounding engine. Yes, these things handle so well, so sticky. And punch it. It makes in current form about 205 horsepower. So looking at this test mule here, you can tell this is a car that's, I think, pretty far along in the development life cycle. This doesn't look like a super early pre-production prototype. This looks like something that's going to be available in production soon. That's my take on it. Very light camo. And also expect a reveal that's going to be sometime in the spring of 2021. Going to go on sale as a 2022 model, probably later next year. Car Scoops said it was a turbo. Car and Driver said it was a turbo. And that's because they were looking into this grill and sort of looking into it and going, oh, what's this under here? What have we got here? It's a big old intercooler, right? Well, I decided to take a look at some photographs from other 86s that have been taken apart for service. It looks the same. What is this? This is an air conditioning heat exchanger unit. It's basically a radiator. And of course, an intercooler is a type of radiator too, but different purpose. This is for your air conditioning. And this looks almost identical to what we're seeing in this camo car. And let's look at a few more things here to compare these vehicles as well. I think the overall shape looks, I'm not going to say identical, but I'm going to say it's very similar. It has very similar proportions and lines. You can look at the height of the front fender over the wheel. You can look at the shape of the rear glass. You can look at the overall proportions. It looks incredibly similar. Let's look at the brake caliper. That is mounted in just about the same position. Okay, so instead of me putting all these photographs together, I actually looked on Twitter, looked at Bozy Tatarovich's feed. He's an automotive journalist. He also helps run a race team, and he actually did the work for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and credit him. Hello, Bozy. So we put the two vehicles side by side, front to back, and they look pretty similar to me. He points out the brake calipers here being in the same position, which indicates probably the same knuckle even. You can look at the height from the wheel arch to the top of the fender. Pretty similar proportions there too. Let's look at the rear suspension, and the diff looks pretty much the same as well. So in fact, I think, on these 2 points, on the turbo versus non-turbo, I'm gonna just put this out there. I'm gonna say this is going to be a non-turbo car. I'm gonna say it's going to be the FA24 engine. The reports now are saying 217 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque. I think it's too early to put an exact number on it. This is still quite a bit before production, and manufacturers typically leave the final tune and the final numbers till they're much closer to production, so I'm not going to put stock in those specific numbers, but I think coming in around 220 horsepower and something below 200 pound-feet of torque is pretty reasonable. Now, if you want more proof that this is not going to have a turbo, let's look at the hierarchy of cars that are available from Toyota. I addressed this briefly in my last video, but I actually put together a chart here to kind of help make it a little bit more clear to people. At the bottom of the rung, in the sports car world at Toyota, and of course at Subaru, we have the GT86. It's called the GT86, and of course the BRZ. It's about $27,000, 205 horsepower, weighs about 2,800 pounds, and the power to weight ratio is 13.5. Okay, then we move up to the Supra twins. Now we're going up in price significantly. We're going up to $43,000. The 2.0 has 255 horsepower, power to weight 12.5, and the Big Daddy, the 3.0 Supra, $51,000. These are all base prices. 382 horsepower, 8.9 power to weight ratio. Now, you got to think, there's another car that has to slot into this whole hierarchy of cars here, and that is going to be the upcoming GR Corolla. It might be called the GRMN Corolla. Not 100% confirmed. I think it's pretty much confirmed for North America. So that is going to have the same drivetrain as the GR Yaris, and in the UK it makes 257 horsepower. It's a 1.6 liter turbo. And it costs about 29,000 pounds, I think, 30,000 pounds in the UK. That translates to about 40,000 US dollars. Power to weight ratio about 11:1. So that actually slots in nicely in between the upcoming GR86 and the 2.0 Supra. In fact, the power to weight ratio is better than the 2.0 Supra, so it's sort of in that same area, but it's a completely different vehicle. Remember, the Supra and the GR86 are both front engine rear wheel drive. That's the configuration. The GR Yaris, this is an all-wheel drive car. This is more along the lines of a mini Subaru WRX type situation. Now, the current Corolla comes in at a little under 3,000 pounds. The GR Yaris in the UK comes in at 2,816. I'm going to guess that a GR Corolla is going to come in at about 3,100 pounds. So that would give it a power to weight ratio of about 12.1, slotting it a little bit below the 2.0 Supra. So that's how the hierarchy works. Toyota needs to separate these vehicles out so that they're not stepping on each other in the market and in terms of price as they kind of fill out their lineup. Every manufacturer does this. So if you are one of the people that is saying it's gotta have a turbo, I'm not gonna buy it without a turbo, it sucks that it doesn't have a turbo, yada, 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 that's great. Your opinion is completely valid, but it doesn't mean that Toyota is gonna make a vehicle specifically for you at the price that you want. They wanna push you up to the more expensive cars where you're going to get a turbo. They've got a number of turbo cars already, and it's going to be starting with the GR Corolla, and of course both Supras are turbos. So if you want a turbo, they just want you to pay a little bit more. And by the way, if you want an entry-level Mustang, it's also got a turbo. That's just kind of the way things are working right now. The only other real alternative in this class is the Mazda Miata, and of course that's non-turbo, pretty much the same formula as the upcoming GR86. There's two videos on screen. One of them is definitely for you. Click on it. My name is Eric. I will see you in the next video.